Hi friends, Mrs. E here. We're going to talk briefly about how to tackle the IXL B.2 identifying audience and purpose. Now, audience and purpose are two concepts that are important to both reading and writing. We're going to talk specifically about how we analyze an existing text in order to determine who the text was written for and what the writer is trying to accomplish. So let's start with those two basic definitions. Audience refers to the intended readers of a text. It's who that writer has in mind when they sit down to write. Now, purpose refers to a writer's reason for writing. Now, the majority of writing purposes fall into two major categories: to inform their readers or to persuade their readers. Now, obviously from there, each of these two primary purposes can become much more specific within each individual piece of writing. So for example, one news report might try to inform voters of a politician's voting record. So they're informing them of a very specific thing. Or a political website might try to persuade voters to support a particular candidate by highlighting the specific portions of his or her record that the website's visitors are likely to approve of. All right, now that we know what audience and purpose is, then how on earth do we actually determine who the audience and what the purpose of a text is? Well, we're going to look for particular clues, and those clues are going to come in the form of word choice, so the specific vocabulary that is used by the writer, the sentence style, whether it be very simple or very complex, the tone, meaning the attitude that the writer has towards both the audience and the subject matter that they are writing about, and then their use of evidence. All of these different clues can be analyzed in order to determine these two important components of a text. So let's check out this example. We're told that this is a newspaper article, which already gets us thinking about a specific text genre and what that newspaper genre is typically for. Now let's go ahead and let's also combine that initial observation with any observations about the text's diction, tone, style, etc. A 4-alarm fire caused severe damage to multiple historic buildings downtown early Thursday morning before being extinguished. More than 50 firefighters from the Springfield Fire Department responded to the blaze around 4 a.m. The fire was largely controlled by 5:30 a.m., but crews continued to survey the area for hotspots. No injuries have been reported, but the extent of the damage is still unclear. The fire's cause has not been determined. Now, when I read this, I am first struck by all of the details that are provided. Details about how many firefighters were involved, what time it started, what time it was controlled. So very information heavy. Now, when I combine those details with the fact that this is a newspaper article, I feel very confident jumping to the conclusion that this particular purpose is to inform. All right, now when we want to think about the audience, who it's written for, we're going to look at some different clues. First off, I notice that again, it's from a newspaper, so very likely it is intended for a general audience, those that would be reading that particular newspaper, so probably not children, probably more adults. Now from there, I noticed that they use kind of vague terms like historic buildings downtown, but downtown where, right? They also talk about the Springfield Fire Department. Now, I happen to know that there is actually a Springfield in every single state within the United States. So that's not super specific either. Now, when we use those terms that are pretty vague and broad, there must be an assumption on the writer's part that the reader knows about this particular fire department or knows about where, these buildings are located in their own downtown. So as I examine my options, probably not going to be written for firefighters. Firefighters would have already had their own knowledge of the event because they would have been there. A local news audience, now that makes a lot of sense, because if they're local, they would already be familiar with the details of where this is happening. Probably not an international news audience, because we would have seen much more specific details about where this is located. And probably not students, because again, we notice that this is in a newspaper. The details are not intentionally watered down for children. The story itself is not really intended for children. So safely, we come back to the conclusion that our audience is a local news audience. Now, you're going to go through that same mental process with each of these little excerpts of text, identifying the audience and the purpose and the specific clues that help you to make those determinations.